Let's now do some final further developments for our grade example. Let's switch to Eclipse. Okay, let me go back to Package Explorer, and then let me close all the classes over here. Okay, and it turns out for grade app 1, grade app 2, we haven't really used them yet. So let me just make them a little bit more interesting. Let me just delete them. I'll delete one of them. Okay, let's say I delete grade app 2. Right click on that and simply delete. Don't worry, you still got the grade app 1 and app 2 in from your week number 2. Remember, we copied them over, so that's fine. Okay, delete it. And then I'm just going to rename it. Right click and say refactor and rename. Just to be grade app, just a single one. I want to show you something called helper method, and also maybe a little bit more example about using disjunction, some simple one. Okay. Let me now double click on this, right? You can see at the moment it's simply calling get letter grade 1. So now we got actually different get letter grade method. We got 1, 2, and 3, right? We talked about different ones in the previous part of the tutorial. So now let's talk about, I want to get something called get grade report. I want to say, in addition to just tell me what my letter grade is, let's say I tell you my mark is 65. Not only that, you want to tell me that I got C+, you also should tell me whether I did well. Let's say a student did well if they got C or above. Let's say if they got either D or D+, or maybe F, that means they didn't do so well. Let's have this definition over here. And let's code it up. And then I'm going to change the call over here. Rather than calling just get letter grade, which will only tell you A+, D. It wouldn't tell you whether you did well, would it? Right? And now here's the principle. Okay? Let me write it down here. In principle, we only call one utility method from console application. So that's something we'd like to follow over here, because we'll follow the same principle also in your labs and also in your programming test, just for simplicity. All right, we only call one method. Okay, so we don't really call two different methods from the utility method, from the utility class. I mean the grade class over here. That's not what we are trying to do. Okay, before I rename this, okay, let's wait a little bit. I'm going to change this to something else. Right, let me now go back to the grade class over here. Okay, let me now create a new class create a new method. Okay, so I'm going to declare that public static, so making that utility method. Let's say string over here, get grade report, and then integer marks over here. Okay, let's say this. Let me just give you a little bit idea about what's going to happen over here. Let's say here, string report. Initially, simply just empty string, let's say. We're going to do some reassignment in the middle, and then eventually we're going to return the report over here. All right. So now here, let's now talk about exactly what's going to happen. Let me maximize it. Stage 1, get the letter grade for the marks. And the marks is exactly the parameter, the input over here. And then stage number 2, determine if the letter grade corresponds to a good performance, C or above. Okay, that's basically what I just described verbally earlier. We want these two stages, right? So number one thing I want to show you in this tutorial the first time will be something called helper method. Okay, so now let me tell you what I mean over here. Just I wouldn't go to my iPad, so this is quite easy to understand. For stage number 1, get a letter grade for marks. Okay, so now if you didn't know about helper method, what you would do is you will simply try to calculate the letter grade. Let me do it. You'll simply maybe just copy and paste. Let's say this part over here, copy and paste. You will simply copy and paste. So you basically you declare LG over here, and then you want to calculate the letter grade like how we explain it. You got 3 or 4 different got 3 different ways of calculating this, right? Either single if statements, or multiple if statements, or nested if statement. We got 3 versions already for you. Okay, I just copy and paste one version. And once I got a letter grade LG, I'm going to do something here to say if LG is actually equal to either A or A plus or A or B plus or B, and etc. In that case, that means I did well. However, I want to say something over here. If you see this, what we really want to avoid when you're programming is you want to avoid duplicates. You can see if I try to copy and paste over here, this part here drastically duplicates with this particular part over here, right? Because we just copy and paste. Having a duplicate is really the no-no for your programming. I'll try to explain this either in the lecture or maybe in a later tutorial video. Given the limited time we got left for this week, I just want to do it in front of you, just see how you can call other method within a utility method. Let me try to do that first this week. At least you can see syntactically how it works and also at the runtime how it works. So what I will do is, rather than copy and paste, what I can do over here is, as long as they're both utility method, which means they got public and static, assuming that's the case, right? So now you can simply say string LG is assigned to get letter grade. And I got 3 versions over here. I can use version 1, version 2, version 3. Let me use version 1. You can try version 2 and 3 later for your own practice. Right? You can see I'm gonna trace together with you, but I can see this is really calling a helper method over here. That's number 1 I want to show you in this video here. We will try to use maybe helper method maybe more often, maybe later in the tutorial series, just to reinforce the idea. For this time, I wouldn't go into an iPad to illustrate, but I will trace together using Eclipse with you. Okay, so I'm gonna say calling get letter grade 1 as a helper method. That's basically what I'm doing. What I'm doing over here. All right. So now once we get this LG over here, so now we can now determine whether the student with the marks actually did well or not well. Okay. Let me show you the version here that may be a little bit naive over here. So now I can say either the student got A, or they got A+, or they got C+, and etc. It's like or. So this is the case where you can use disjunction. Okay. And we can use a boolean operator over here. Boolean over here. Okay, let's say did well. All right, it's a boolean variable. It's assigned to. Now we're gonna have a boolean expression on the right hand side, and one of the possible boolean expression is using logical operator. So now I want to really compare the LG. So you can see LG is actually a return value from get letter grade, which is of type string over here. So now how do you compare string value? I can also show you that how you can compare string. Comparing string value, you cannot just use equal. That's something I will try to explain later after the reading week when we talk about object orientation. Whenever you want to compare string values, you got to use the equals method, which I'll show you right away. And then, however, for comparing character, also integer, you should use the equal sign, right? So now I can say the following. I can say LG dot equals over here. That's how you compare string values. And then it can either be A+, or either they did A+ or A, or B+, or B, or C+, or C. So these are all will be considered as good performance. Okay. So now let me just type it. LG dot equals, and then it will be A over here. Let me just save some typing over here. I can just copy this part here. Okay. A, and then B+, and also B, and also C+, and also C. All right. So the big picture is we are saying that a person, student is considered as doing well, either true or false, if it's either because their letter grade is equals A+, or their letter grade equals A, or either or, right? So as long as one of them is actually true, then that'll be considered as doing well. Otherwise, if none of them is actually true, that means they didn't do well. A, B+, B, C+, C. Okay. I will just do this version over here, and then you might be wondering, is it possible to simplify it? I can show you one possible simplification for this particular case. Okay, I'll show it to you. But before I do that, let me just do the report over here. Okay. And then I can now say the report, which is a string over here. Okay, so now I can say report, for example, I can say plus equal. Or you can just say reassign. That's okay. You can say empty string is accumulated. So that's a plus equal. That's the augmented assignment that we talk about in elementary programming. You can check. All right. Plus equal. And then we can say plus equal, let's say, grade. And then plus LG plus. What I want to say is, you know what? Let me say this. Let me just make it simpler for you. I can say if did well. All right. And then we can say this. Report plus equal over here. I can say grade plus LG. And then I can say this. Well done. Right? If they did well. Otherwise over here, okay, just gotta make sure you have the matching curly brackets. In that case, I can report plus equal to grade over here plus LG, and then give them some comments over here. How should I cheer somebody up? So I should say, you can do better next time. How about that? All right, just be positive over here. All right, one more thing to actually show you. Okay, you can see somehow this string over here and this string over here share something in common. Right, I want to show you another trick over here. Of course, that's because I got a little bit more experience than you have, so that's why I know how to do it. But I can learn from that. Right, what I can do is I can extract this common part over here. Over here, I can put it here. And then once I have done this, so this will be done unconditionally. And then I can get rid of this part over here and get rid of this part over here to see if you're comfortable with this. Okay, so I'm saying that I'll do this first of all about a grade in the report. And then depending on whether the student did well, I can say either well done, or I can say you can do better next time. You know what? I can even simplify this further. I can say colon space. Right? So now it's completely removing the duplicates over here. All right. Let's now try to test them. Right? Well done. All right. Just got to make sure I spelled it correctly. Let's now do, let's say, example over here. Some tests. So if I go to, you know what? Let me just first of all go to grade app over here. If I, rather than get letter grade, I'll say get grade report and marks. And then I'm just going to only output a report over here. All right. Okay, let me call this report. All right, so there's a new version over here. So all the logic of the application is going to be done in this one single utility method over here. All right. So let's now invoke the console application. For example, if I got 65, well done, right? If I got, for example, maybe 59, which would be D plus, right? You can do better. All right. Okay, just simple report. Why don't we do a simple test? 2 maybe. Let's now go to test grade over here. So now what I will do is I'm just going to do another test. You're going to say add test. All right. Let me just maximize this. Public void test number 7. Okay, I'm just going to make sure to enter the right place. So string result is grade.get grade report. And then let me try maybe, let's try maybe say 61. That should be a C, right? Assert equals over here. So I believe it's grade C, colon, well done. I believe that's how I spelled it, right? We're going to check. And then, so that will be just the result. Okay, I believe that's the one. So if I try to rerun all the tests, you can see everything passed. Okay, let's try another one. Why don't we try test number 8? And then what's left will be, I want to show you one improvement and also run the debugger. Okay, number 8 over here. And then I'm just going to do, let's say somebody got 59, right? That's I think a D plus. D plus, you can do better next time. I believe that's what I said. And run it. Okay, everything passed, right? Okay, now you can see easy ones over here, right? And now I want to trace this very quickly together with you just to make sure you really understand what's going on. Especially you can see inside the get grade report over here, you can see in the grade class, we call just another method called get letter grade. So that's something I'd like to show you very quickly, okay? And that's actually something we did as well last time, right? About really step into the different methods. Okay, let me just do that very quickly. Go to test grade over here, and then let's say I put a breakpoint. Let me remove the previous one over here. Okay, let me now put a breakpoint line 49 right before I try to call this method here at 60 on 61 marks. If I say launch the debugger, and then you know what? Yeah, I'm gonna switch to the debug perspective over here. Okay, now I'm right before right before executing this line over here. Right before, I'm gonna step into. Once I say step into, I'm gonna step into get grade report over here. If I say that over here, so now I'm now in the get grade report over here. Okay, I'm gonna step over here. You can see it's right before executing line number 9. So now what I have two choices. Either I can say step over. Let me do it just to show you. Okay, you can see so far I don't have LG over here. I don't. So if I say step over, it's going to tell me LG is simply C. However, if I say step over, I didn't really step into to see exactly how get letter grade 1 works. But if I want to, I could have said step into. Okay, so you know how to really say step over for the rest to see how things work, right? I'll leave that to you. Let me do one more time. If I say debug again, you can see now I'm right before executing this. If I say step into, I will switch to get grade report again. Step into. And then I'll say step over. Okay, now rather than stepping over like what I did, I'm going to step into. If I say step into, I'm going to go into get letter grade 1. Step into. And then you can see now I'm in get letter grade 1, right? Now in the first line. And if I just step over, that's exactly what I did before about how to calculate the letter grade for 61. Okay, let's say I'm done. Okay, that's all I want to do for now. And then I can simply say step return over here. Where would I be back? Who actually call get letter grade 1? It's the get grade report. So I will go back there if I say step return. If I say get step return, so now I'm back to where I call the get letter grade get letter grade 1. That's where I called it, right? So now I'm at the end of that. So if I say step over right now, so it will show me the final result over here, right? So trying to get used to about not just a single utility method, but in general, the utility method can also call other utility methods, and that method can also call others. In general, the calling relationship, the call chain is really unbounded, basically, right? I'll try to show you more example later, but this is just the first one for you to play with. All right, as I promised, I'm going to show you how you can simplify the expression over here. Let me stop the debugger and switch back to Java over here. Okay, and somehow, okay, let me just go back. If I double click on this, I'm back to the normal layout over here. I also stop the JUnit test. All right, so now we may not be so happy about this particular. I can see the line is actually too long over here. Okay. So now, what our assumption is, letter grades can either be A plus, or A, or B plus, or B, or C plus, or C, or D plus, or D, or F. So let's say these are the only possibilities, right? So that's our assumption. So now we are saying that if it's actually either A plus or A all the way to C, so that means we did well. Is there another way to write it? Did well, not only it means that either you get A or A plus or B plus, etc. Or it simply means you didn't really get D or D plus or F, right? Equivalently, right? So what I will do is I'm going to comment this out. This one is really working, but what I will do is I'm going to say this. Boolean did well over here is simply assigned to, right? Not the case. lg.equals, again, don't forget to really use equals to compare string value. That means you didn't get D plus, and or it is not the case that, okay, think about it, it's not the case that either you get D plus or you get dot equals over here and also D or F. So this will be much shorter. And then, however, you should really know about the logic, right? Logic seems to be a little bit trickier, right? Because you want to say this. Think about this part here is going to be evaluated first. Let's say the student got C. Okay, let's say the student. For just what I'm highlighting over here, let's try to evaluate it, right? lg.equals D plus. C equals D plus will be false. C equals D will be false. C equals F will be false. So that means you got false or false or false. Remember, the only way to have disjunction being false is when both operands or all the operands are simply false. So that means the expression I'm highlighting over here is simply just false. Not false is going to be true. So this is why this is kind of equivalent. Intuitively, let me say that once more. Okay, intuitively, and then we'll try to trace it one more time. Okay. So now what's happening over here is we are saying that either you can say doing well, it simply means you do A plus or A or B plus or B and etc. Right? Equivalently, you can say you did well simply because you didn't get D plus or D or F. The part about you didn't get is translated into just the exclamation mark over here for negation. I'm just trying to show you one more possibility over here. All right, hopefully you're okay with this. Let's now trace one more time about this expression particularly, and then we'll call it a day for the week. All right. Let me now just try to trace one more time. So we can leave the same breakpoint over here. Okay, I'm just gonna say debug over here, and then switch to the debug perspective. And now let me step into get grade report. Step into. All right. So now I want to I want to test this one over here, right? So I can say step over, step over, step over. Oh, actually I did a little bit too far. Let me do it again. Beg your pardon. Let me just now launch the debugger once more. Step into, step over. Okay, I'm gonna step over without stepping into. Step over. Okay, now I'm right here, right? Let's now take a look at how you can evaluate this. Okay. Let me remove all the previous expressions over here. It's really important. So now you can think about this part over here. First of all, you know that LG is simply C. So now C equals D plus, false. And then C equals D, false. Not surprising. C equals F should be false. So now that means if I try to combine all these Boolean, all these three Boolean expression over here using disjunction, right? That would be false, right? That's the only way you can make I can widen this a little bit over here so you can see. So you can see since all the three expression over here are simply false. So disjoining them using disjunction, vertical bar will just be false. And then we are going to make this exclamation mark over here. So that means exclamation mark over here is going to give you true. So that means did well will be true over here, right? Okay, so did well would just be true over here. True. You can see the true over here. I want to do one more to show you the logic, and then we are done. Okay, did well will just be true. All right, let me now stop over here and then go back to Java perspective. All right, and then now maximize it. So the one we traced was about somebody who actually did well, right? Why don't we try somebody who didn't do well? Okay, let's try that. Okay, let's now try this. Put a breakpoint line 55. We're gonna debug test 8 over here, 59. You're gonna see by evaluating the same Boolean condition. Let's see what's gonna happen. So now if I launch the debugger again, switch to debug perspective over here, and now let me step into over here, and I'm just going to step over, right? You can see exactly the same as before. So now you can see the LG is simply just D+, right? So now D+ over here is actually one of them. You can see this part here is already true. You can see this is true over here. And then all the rest is simply just false as before. But remember for the disjunction, as long as one of them is actually true, it's going to be true overall. And then we got disjunction, meaning that since you actually got since you satisfy one of the categories of doing poorly, which is D+, in that case, by negating it, we're going to get false. So false simply means, did you do well? False, you didn't do well. All right. So hopefully the logic is not really too tricky, right? I'm going to summarize in just a moment. All right. So, and then if you say step over here, you can see did well will just be false over here, right? So guys, I think it's really important for you to see, really try to trace the example. You can see we so far hopefully have really picked up the skill for debugger, right? It's you're already a little bit behind if you haven't really tried the debugger even a single time, right? It's really important. All right, let me stop over here. I would like to do one more illustration and then we are done. Let me switch to iPad. All right, so now let's talk about the two cases over here. Let's say in one case, let's say the student got C. And the other case, student got, let's say, D+ over here. Okay, let's see this. Intuitively, C means they did well. So we expect to see true eventually. On the other hand, D+ means they didn't do well. Eventually, we expected to see false. Let's see how this will be computed using our logic over here, right? In both cases, we're going to evaluate, first of all, this part over here. This part, and also this part, right? And also don't forget, we also got negation and negation. We're going to evaluate this part, and also this part. Let's try one by one. So now, C equals D+ will be false. C equals D will be false. C equals F will be false. So false or false or false is going to give you overall false. By applying the negation over here, it's going to give you true. So that means true means they did well. All right. So this is how you do this one here. You got to think about it. I can only explain to you this far, but you really have to digest yourself as well. How about the D+ case? So for D+, so let's try this. D+ equals D+ should be true. D+ equals D should be false. D+ equals F should be false. And remember, as long as one of them is actually true, overall it's going to be true for the disjunction over here. And then by applying the negation to this overall true, it's going to be false, right? So now false simply means did they do well? They didn't do well. So it's simply false, right? All right, so that's the best I can do to really show you how the logic actually works for this particular simplification. You will have to maybe reflect on what we have done this week. We have done quite a bit of logic this time about numerical ranges and also for logical operators. Study them and then get in touch if you need help.